Today we have keynotes by the two oldest project management, not the people. Project management, I know what you were thinking. Project management, Shirley will stick me in the back or something. Project management organizations in existence going back to the 60s. And they have both grown. And when you hear project management professional organizations, IPMA and PMI are the two that pop up everywhere. So we're very pleased to have Shirley Edwards, who is on the board and has been on the board of PMI for 2 years. She is a practicing project manager, a Purdue graduate. I don't know if she's ever made any boilers, but she has an industrial engineering background and has another year to serve on board. Right, Shirley? So her topic is strategy, something that project managers sometimes lose sight of. So I'll give it to you, Shirley.
Thank you. Well, while my friend is setting up my PowerPoint presentation, share a little bit, and I'll get in front of the mics in a minute, so if you guys can't hear me great, then I apologize. Share a little bit about myself. I am home. I was actually born and raised in Texas, and that's what we say in the South, right? You're born and raised. And I'm thrilled to be here. I actually, as Jim mentioned, I went to college at Purdue, but before I did that, I went to high school in Corpus Christi, Texas, and graduated in '79. So for those of you who are doing the math, I'm 50. So no astonished looks or gasps or shocked disbelief. That's okay. And left here in 1980, went to Purdue, got my degree in industrial engineering, spent about 20 years up in Michigan, and about 6 years ago went to Charlotte, where I currently live and work for Wells Fargo. I do love coming back to Texas, though, because this is home, and it will always be home. And there's some things I really enjoy in particular that I look for the minute my plane lands and I get into Texas. If it's spring, the first and foremost are the bluebonnets. I just really, you don't see them too often anymore, but the oil rigs and bobbing up and down. And I love the don't mess with Texas signs. And only a Texan could really understand that, but it completely reminds me of my mother, who still lives in Corpus Christi, because she's the epitome of don't mess with Texas. And I'll give you a quick example, and then I'll get on to the topic. When I was living in Michigan and actually working for Comerica Bank, which was headquartered there at the time, but now is headquartered in Dallas, my mom showed up unexpectedly one Saturday. She had driven straight through from Corpus Christi to Detroit, Michigan, which is a 30-hour drive. And we came home after a day-long trip and discovered her car in our driveway. And she was nowhere to be seen. So we walked in the house. She's sitting on my couch having a cup of coffee. And the first question was, Mom, why didn't you tell us you were coming, and how did you get in the house? And her response was, honey, you really need to do something about these windows because this house is way too easy to break into. And a few minutes later, we're unloading all of her things from her car because she generally travels with half of her house, and she hands me a bag, and she's in her 80s now, and she takes a lot of medication, and she said, this is my medication, would you put it in the kitchen? And I take this bag from her, and I swear it weighed 50 pounds. And I'm thinking, how much medication could one person possibly have? I plopped it down on the kitchen counter, opened it up, look inside, there's all these bottles of medicine and a pistol. I said, Mom, you've got a .38 in here? And she looks over my shoulder and says, no, hon, That's the 45, the 38's in my purse. True story. She's a tough lady. So when I see the don't mess with Texas signs, I think of my mom. So let's talk about strategy today. Project management is truly a strategic competency. And I think a lot of times we get caught up in the tactical aspects of project management and we forget the importance of strategy. And really, when you're dealing with upper level senior executives in your organization, strategy is what they care about. They don't want to even talk about tactics. They figure you guys have that handled. They want to know about strategy. Some people think that project management is, kind of just a management in general, tactical kind of approach to things, and really, it has become a strategic competency for many organizations, large and small. And as we progress through time and as our organizations develop and grow, it becomes even more and more important. And as we move into the future and we deal with these unexplained forces, it becomes even more relevant. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to kind of go a little bit over the history of project management so you can understand how project management came to be a strategic competency. We're going to talk about now and how important it is in today's world and how it accomplishes a lot of things that we need to get accomplished in this world. And in the future, how project management will be able to continue to evolve to respond to the whitewater of change that we all deal with every day. So to understand the context of how project management has become a strategic competency, we really need to look back at the history of project management. And, many of you have seen pictures such as this of old manufacturing environments. And we all know how organizations have evolved and developed over the years. The modern organization really has stemmed from this original context. And now we have, I think, the typical hierarchy of a large organization. We have these various groups, whether it be production, marketing, R&D, human resources. And what you've got is this repeatable pattern that you can institutionalize, which makes it quite effective in terms of managing day-to-day operations, in terms of really more of your business as usual. But in the 1960s, as these organizations started to emerge, things started to change. They were having issues, primarily because this wonderful approach that had been created, that has been developed to allow organizations to function effectively, didn't work well in a project environment. The decision authority was way too far from execution. Responsibility was diffused. Communications were stretched thin. And we had these silo-based operations that were very difficult to maneuver when you were developing new products, implementing new processes or things of that nature. And so, just starting a project and assigning a team to it wasn't enough. It didn't work. Things were not successful like we had hoped they would be. And so project management developed its own unique discipline. So back to the roots a little bit here. Originally, when you look at project management, there are some projects that you can intuitively assume that were the originators of project management. Building a bridge, creating a building, a new production line, whatever the case may be, we know that those were like the original project managers. So the projectized fields developed these approaches that we use today and develop approaches that are definitely much more flexible than what those legacy organizations permitted. And at first, those approaches were informal and intuitive, but over time, we got more and more tools. We got the Gantt charts, We got the critical path analysis that was actually created by chemical engineers at DuPont, and it evolved into a profession of its own. Then during and after World War II, we started to see an explosion in the project management profession. We had operations research, we had Cold War defense projects. Of course, the 1960s space race was huge for us. And then we moved up to the next level. We had software that we used to supplement and support all of the work that we were doing, things that we couldn't necessarily conceive of in our heads. And then IT came into play, and it not only enabled project management, but it drove project management. So a lot of the IT development tools and capabilities became the customers for our projects. So here's the challenge. Can a large organization bring its strategy and resources to bear and get new results with ad hoc groups and capture the common purpose, performance, and accountability of a small team? And the answer is yes. We do that every day in projects, in large organizations. In Wells Fargo, in my case, a very, very large organization. Our footprint is from coast to coast now. But we're able to accomplish that every day. And people like Peter Drucker and Alvin Toffler and Warren Bennis, they identified this challenge and recognized the need. So let's talk about a really amazing example. And this is where project management is strategic for survival. 21st Century Insurance. It was it's still around now today, but in a different capacity. They had a subgroup called AIG that had failed miserably. AIG traded in credit swaps and mortgage-backed securities. They had so much debt it was ridiculous. And because AIG was a subsidiary of 21st Century, 21st Century's customers lost confidence in the company and started to bail. And as a result of that, they were going down, and they were going down fast. They got an offer to be merged into Farmers Insurance. The caveat to that is they had 90 days to do it. So if you can imagine all the work that goes into a merger, disconnecting systems that are being used in your current environment, connecting to the systems of farmers, getting all of that pulled together, and doing that in a cohesive way, in a timely manner. Farmers didn't give them any extra time. They said, if you can do it, we'll merge. If you can't, we won't. So it was critical that they get this effort done in 90 days. And they did, and they did it very well. According to the president of 21st Century, he said, this project was the most critical one we have ever completed, for it meant the literal future of the company. By staying on schedule, in scope, and within budget, while using the PMI framework for effective project management, we not only met farmers' requirements, but continued providing uninterrupted service to our stakeholders and our customers. That was a huge accomplishment. Clearly, it was a strategic issue for this company, for their survival. Mark Rainley, who's now the CEO of PMI, at the time he was the COO, he said this was the most sweeping business transformation possible. The project team's work show how credentialed professionals can make the difference in successful execution and outcomes on a truly transformational project. So it's simple, right? I mean, it's not complex. We identify requirements, we establish our clear objectives, and we do our juggling act with scope, time, cost, and quality. And then we align all that with the concerns and expectations of our stakeholders, and we're done. Shirley, we all know it's not that easy. It's a tough job, and it takes a special person to do it. And ultimately, what we end up with is a very focused and explicit practice that really has become instrumental in all of our lives. Near and dear to your heart, I'm sure, for many of you, let's talk about project management being strategic for execution. Back in 2005, the Dallas Cowboys started envisioning this new stadium that they wanted to build, and they actually broke ground in 2006. 3 years later, in 2009, they opened. 3-year project, huge project. Scope creep, anybody know? Yeah, those big ideas that our sponsors get in their heads, those definitely came to fruition. They wanted to have, these giant video displays, the biggest ones ever, and all these fancy things. The original budget was $650 million. It got finalized at $1.1 billion. So they had a little bit of scope creep, but it was intended. I'm sure the project manager had very little hair, or what was left was gray by the time he got done. But they had, on this project in particular, they had 50 directed project team members with 250 subcontractors and a peak labor force of more than 2,200 people. That's a lot of things to coordinate all at once. It's amazing. And they got it done, and they did it very well. They did the time management, they did the quality management, the human resources management, the communications, the risk. It was all done right. And they had stakeholders to contend with, like the city of Arlington, the county. I mean, all of those things can be difficult to manage in a project. But with its signature arches that go on more than 1/4 of a mile, the stadium did open. It opened on time and successfully. It truly is iconic. I think this is a landmark in many regards. And it showed how this Manhattan construction company, with their skilled project managers, can really make a difference in an organization, a strategic difference in an organization. And as a result of this, this particular project was awarded PMI's Project of the Year in 2010. Project management is also strategic in our global economy. And what makes it a strategic competency? Well, if you look at the world, we have $13 trillion a year in capital expenses. So those are the things like construction, machinery, equipment purchases, building roads, building railways. That's all in there. In addition to that, we have trillions of dollars that go into IT projects, which is over and above the 13 trillion that we're talking about. So if you consider everything we do in this world every day and how important project management is to getting that accomplished, it's actually quite amazing. And we do something very important in the global economy. PMI estimates that we have about 20 million people every year that are on a project team. That's a lot of people. And then we have these external forces that come into play in all of this that are very critical in terms of keeping things moving forward in this economy. That clearly, we all have this issue with the downturn. It's making some projects go away. It's making other projects even more and more critical, that they be completed on time, that they can be completed under budget. Otherwise, we're liable to get shot in the foot. And if you look at China and India and some of these emerging markets right now, they're progressing forward quite rapidly despite the downturn. And they're importing project management resources to get all this work done. And then, in addition to that, as all this is going on, we have a war for talent that's building in our profession. And I don't know if all of you know this, but we have the baby boom generation nearing retirement, and the incoming workforce is smaller. They're more demanding. They're pickier. They get to choose who they want to work for because there's not as many of them to go around. And on top of that, we have the pressure for social responsibility. People want projects that are sustainable. So you wrap all that together, and clearly there's a tough balance that has to be maintained. And of course, project management is strategic for organizations. Interesting study that was actually done by The Economist, and they interviewed 600 executives across the world, and they asked them, what skill is the most important skill in your staff? And they said project execution. What capability does your organization most need? And it's the ability to implement strategic change. And so basically what you have is two ways of saying the same thing. Strategic change is implemented through projects, and we are the people that implement it. So effectively, two sides of the same Texas coin. A couple other facts and figures, some of these you may want to take away. I've used these at work myself because I found them quite compelling. This is actually a study that was done by PricewaterhouseCoopers, a pretty large survey. And what they discovered was that 80% of higher performing projects use a certified project manager. If you need to build a business case on why someone should get their certification, I think this is step one, 80%. 50% of our project failures are traced to poor or no project management due to bad estimates and deadlines, scope changes, and poor resource planning. And larger and more complex organizations are now adopting program and portfolio management. Program being, of course, the management of a group of interrelated projects, and portfolio management being the management of the overall portfolio of projects and programs in your organization. And project management is strategic for recovery and growth. So I'm going to give you another example. We have a company named SPG Solar out of California, named one of the Hot 100 fastest growing companies in Entrepreneur magazine. And this company had a really big challenge in front of it. They wanted to stay strong and green in the energy game. So what they did was they set forth a new series of project management processes, performing tasks in parallel based on critical path, incorporating just-in-time delivery of their resources to minimize downtime without creating site congestion, redesigning their critical structures to eliminate site welding, to simplify their wiring, and reduce ground penetration of their superstructures. As a result of that effort, they were able to install this whole effort, 1 megawatt project, they were able to reduce their time of their 1 megawatt projects from 8 to 13 months down to 60 days. They reduced their costs on average by 7.5%, and they saved $3 million per project. That's a lot of projects. It's a lot of money. And with these reductions, they were able to take on more projects, increase their cash flow, and actually had 140% more projects year over year, earning a leadership position in the solar energy profession or industry. Project management is clearly strategic for organizations just in terms of overall performance of our projects. This is about a study that was done by PMI, and they looked at high performers in terms of projects and low performers. High performers they defined as projects that had an 80% or more success rate within the organization. Out of the sample that they looked at, about 1,100 PMI members, that was 13%. Not a huge sample, but still notable. The low performers they defined as 60% or less success rates on their projects, which was about 27% of the community that they surveyed, and the remaining 60% kind of fell into that moderate performers category, and they really kind of excluded them from the research because they wanted to do a contrast of high performers to low performers. And what they found in the high-performing group, that 70% had mature project and portfolio management practices, half of them used standard project management practices, 72% have formal practices for their developing project management competency, 44% have over one-third of their project managers PMP certified, 88% use risk management techniques always or often, and 85% track or often track project performance measures. And in total, 92% of their projects met their original goals and business intent. Now, if you compare that to the low-performing group, the low-performing group was 35% versus 70% for mature project and portfolio management practices, 12% for standard PM practices, 42% had formal project manager competency development plans, 18% had more than a third of their project managers certified, 54% use risk management techniques, and 51% always or often track project management performance. So in the low performing group, they actually had about 36% of their projects on average that were successfully completed. And if you look at $1 million expenditure, that's basically putting $350,000 at risk for your organization. So clearly it is meaningful to the companies that we work for. So here's another example, a company in Mexico named Indeval. This company is one of the largest, if not the largest, trading organizations in Mexico. In general, they handle trades equal to 20% of Mexico's GDP. So they've got a lot of responsibility here. And in doing this, there's a lot of investment on part of the buyers and sellers because they have to take out short-term loans or some kind of funding to support those transactions until they're finally settled. So people have big money invested on a temporary basis in this particular trades. So in 2005, Indeval began a project to combine their multiple settlement systems into one. And it was a huge endeavor, had a huge impact on their organization. They named the project DALI. And truly it was, an example of a high-performing organization. I mean, this was the team of teams. They were able to increase their speed so rapidly that they were confirming settlements only 1 or 2 minutes after the trading order was entered. So that's a huge amount of productivity gains. As a result of that, they were able to save their customers almost $3 billion in the first 18 months of operation. They had 52% less liquidity required for the banks, and their flawless operation continued through our financial crisis in 2008 and 2009. Their system was stellar. It was absolutely stellar. In April 2010, the Institute for Operations Research and Management Sciences honored them with its Franz Edelman Award for achievement, which is the first time that that award has ever gone to a financial organization in 39 years. The CEO said, "A major development that will profoundly change the way our business is conducted. I am proud of a great team of industry, government, and academia working together with a common goal to deliver a world-class, state-of-the-art security settlement system." And project management is strategic for careers, too. It's for our careers in particular. About every 2 years, PMI conducts a salary survey. Some of you may have seen it already in the past, but it is done every year. And we just finished our 6th salary survey. And on average, across all countries, roles, and experience levels, project managers make roughly $90,000. But the upper 25% respondents earn at least $114,000. And the survey also confirmed that the PMI credential is one of the most valued and highly appreciated certifications in the marketplace. So PMPs do make a difference in terms of our careers. So a little bit about careers at HP Services. It's a division of the Hewlett-Packard Company. And they have about 4,000 project managers in 170 different countries. And they recognize the importance of having career pathing capabilities and training for their project managers. They initiated an effort to get consistency among their detailed job descriptions, bring project management skills into alignment with their organization's business needs, to introduce consistency in the nomination and selection process, including managing promotions across the geographies, and adding a senior position at the director level to accommodate the needs of the larger, more complex projects that they manage. As a result of that, the organization's project management maturity increased. They had the percentage of their projects completed each year on time and in budget were higher and exceeded the industry averages, and they increased their employee retention rates. And what they used was the PMI Career Pathing Framework, and if you want to get some more information about that, it is on PMI.org. In terms of where PMI has gone and how it represents our profession in general, if you look at PMI's growth since the 1960s, it has gone up exponentially over those years. As of June this year, we were over 357,000 members, well over 500,000 practitioners if you count those who are also certified but not members, and 185 different countries. So the profession is growing, and even during some of the recession periods that we've had over the past decade, there hasn't been any notable decline. If anything, there's been an increase in the project management community and PMI membership. A little bit more about PMI. PMI was founded by working project managers to share their ideas and their concepts, to develop this network where people could start taking advantage of what other people had created. It is not for profit, it's volunteer driven. I'm a volunteer. I don't get paid to be on the board. I put in my own time, lots of it. And its goal is to advance the profession through such things as collaborative communities, conducting and publishing research, and developing and updating standards. Here are some of the standards that have been created over the years. Some of them may look familiar to you. If you are a PMI member, I'm going to give you a really neat tip right now. Many of these standards for PMI members are available for free download on PMI.org. So if you're interested in getting a copy of the PMBOK, for example, and you're a member, you can go out there and download it. But we have a new one. The newest one is the Practice Standard for Project Estimation. That came out recently. There's updates. The fifth edition of the PMBOK is currently being developed. There's 5 other updates that are currently in progress. And these are all done by the project management volunteers in PMI from all over the world. So you've got a really huge knowledge base that is contributing to all of this. And of course, I know some of you are familiar with our credentials, the PMP, which as of end of last year, we have more than 400,000 PMPs in the country. The Program Management Professional, which is still relatively new. At this point, there's about 500 people certified in that particular certification. CAPM, which is the Certified Associate in Project Management, has about 13,000 certificate holders. The Project Management Scheduling Professional, which came out in the spring of 2008, has about 400. The Risk Management Professional came out in the fall of 2008. They have about 500 people who have been certified in that. And then there is a new one underway called the Agile Certified Practitioner. That's in pilot mode right now. If you meet the qualifications, the pilot is open to the public, and you could certainly reach out to PMI and express your interest. But they anticipate rolling this one out in third quarter of this year. So a quick show of hands. Who in here is a PMP? Gosh, that's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I'm a PMP as well, so I'm in good company. Any program management professionals? PGMP? Anybody? Anybody have a CAPMs? Any CAPMs? Anybody have any of these other certifications? Well, we got the PMPs covered. So let's look into the future and where project management is going from here. If I could look into the future and try and foresee the challenges, I'd be a very rich woman. But we need to consider how all of this is going to impact our profession. There are, uneven economic recoveries, continued financial pressures, climate changes, the growing need for energy efficiency, and the continued rise of the part-time worker, which is a huge change in our workforce. Those are all things, those are the known knowns, right? And there's a lot of unknowns that we haven't really even given consideration to. So in order for us to be successful in the future, we really have to be able to keep up with all of this through our own personal development. We have to be agile. We have to be conversant with green initiatives. Sustainability, we want to reduce costs and business risks. And you're going to need a lot of soft skills. And I know some of you have seen it, but the need for that has always been there, but I think it's growing even more, because if you look at where the workforce is going to be in 2020 and the different generations that are going to be comprising that, it's just going to be such a huge mixed bag. For example, social media. Any of you that deal with a lot of younger people in your organization know that because of social media and some of the changes that have occurred in our environment, because of that, those people communicate differently. They don't communicate in those traditional ways. I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've had a junior project manager come to me and say, I have sent him 6 emails and he still hasn't responded to me. And my first reaction is, have you picked up the phone? And more often than not, the answer is no, because that's not the communication skills that they've learned. So if we're going to be able to manage these diverse project teams, we have to have very strong soft skills to back them up. So in summary, project management is a strategic competency for results, for execution, for global, for transferring new knowledge to operations, but more than anything for our organizations and for our careers and the future of our profession, it is definitely a strategic competency. And with that being said, I think we'll call it a wrap. Any questions?
All right, we'll look after it. Hi there.
Hello.
We're talking about salaries, and I wanted to know what industry were those salaries based on? I saw 90 to 100. Was that IT construction, was it across the board?
It's cross-industry and global, so it's not just U.S.
We had an input yesterday that you couldn't hear the questions, so when you asked them, would you speak up?
I'll repeat them. So the question that she asked was the salary survey, was it just 1 or 2 industries? And the answer is no, it was multi-industries and global in participation. Any other questions?
I'm sorry. The HPUs, what do you call it, what you have on the
PMI Career Framework.
the career framework? So is that's just a measurement of the, how would you call it, the level of experience the PM has, or is that included in there?
So the question is basically, what is the PMI Career Framework? It is a straw man that organizations can adopt and use as a means, A, yes, to gauge where the project managers are in terms of their skill set and capabilities, but B, also to give people something to look forward to. I mean, if you're in a project management position and you don't have a career path to work with, I mean, you're just winging it every day, and you never know where you're going to go next. So
it's a career path to get them up from, project management 1, 2, 3.
it is a career path to progress in the profession. So typically, you'd see a project coordinator moving into a project manager, 1, 2, 3, 4, then into program management and portfolio management, and somewhere along the lines, possibly PMO management. Yes, ma'am.
Following on that, Jim, is this framework available on the PMI website?
Is the what?
Is this framework?
Yes, the framework is available on the PMI website for members. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned the new Agile Certification, and you went through all the books that PMI has. Are they coming up with an Agile book to go along with the certification?
So the question is, are they coming up with a standard for Agile certification or for Agile project management? I don't know, honestly. Agile has risen so quickly. That is one area where PMI is putting a lot of energy. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did, but I'm not aware if they are. Any other questions?
What industry are you seeing the most growth in PMI?
I don't know if there's any one industry that stands out. I mean, clearly IT, the question is what industry are we seeing the most growth in? Clearly IT has always been a dominant industry for project management. I can tell you that the biggest growth that we're getting in PMI is actually from non-North American countries. especially a lot of those emerging markets, Asia, India. That's where by far the largest growth for PMI is coming from.
Richard.
Yes, you mentioned growth in Asia and India. Is there opportunity for U.S. people to kind of outsource work from the U.S. to manage those projects, or is it expected that we would have to move?
A lot of those countries are importing project managers. It's actually something that's occurring quite often, depending on the company, of course. I can't tell you, whether or not they would allow you to work from the U.S., but given the technology that we have today, I wouldn't see it as being an uncommon situation. I mean, we do it all the time. I meet with people at Wells from all over the United States and can literally work with them for 6 months and not even know what they look like. So it wouldn't surprise me at all.
You mentioned in your speech that generation is maybe going and maybe not enough resources are coming to replace that. PMI is doing an excellent work to help people to improve them, to adapt to the new needs. I assume that society has also to do something to prepare for the future. Is PMI, in a way, interacting with the academic world, with the universities, to prepare this workforce, in order to be prepared for the new challenges?
So the question is, what is PMI doing to prepare the workforce that's coming in, the smaller workforce, and help them to become more proficient at project management so that we don't have this diminished impact on our profession. Some of you may be aware of the PMI Educational Foundation. It's a subsidiary of PMI, a not-for-profit, and that is our arm from a philanthropic perspective for doing exactly what you were suggesting, working with universities, working with school systems. If you get a chance to go out to their website, it's PMIEF.org. It's a fantastic organization. I've done a lot of work with them this year. They have scholarships for students. They have tons of educational material that's free for anyone to download. If you want a brochure on project management in your daily life that you want to share with someone that doesn't have a clue what project management is, it's there. They have educational programs for teachers in schools that can be leveraged. There's a huge amount of resources that you can pull from their website, and they are sponsoring research every day. So they have very strong alliances with the universities. Any other questions?
Okay.
All right, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Always good to be updated on what's going on at PMI, and strategy is always at the forefront. You heard Shirley say that she is a native Texan. That's what, she got that out real fast. I understand them because I married one. Now, this was intended for wine, but let me tell you what's going to happen to this carafe and glasses. 1 hour after she gets home, guess what it's going to be full of? Pre-sweetened iced tea. Thank you, Shirley.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Gotta
much.
love sweet tea.